Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. Today, I have with me after a long time in Dev Talks clock, is Air Marshal GS Bedi. जो हमको he will tell us something which is very interesting. दो तीन चीजें हुई हैं. One is that the Russians have allegedly starting to think about putting nukes in space. ठीक है. दूसरा एक phenomenon suddenly बाहर निकल रहा है which is called near space. अभी ये something that we need to understand, yaar. The war was on the ground, the air, the sea, under the sea, all good. Space, understood. We've discussed this. What in the world is near space? Let's try and find out this evening with Air Marshal Bedi. Sir, namaskar. Welcome to the show. You've been missed.
Namaskar, Radhi. No, it's always a pleasure, and I myself look forward to being on your show and interacting with your audience. It's always wonderful, and just out of some, pre kind of occupation, but always a pleasure, and I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Sir, first, sir, let's tackle the Russians. I mean,
Mhm.
this whole Star Wars thing and all this stuff had started in the 80s, Ronald Reagan's time, where they wanted to put ABMs in space, they wanted to put nukes in space, and this in space, and that in space. This latest dialogue literally brings back the focus into space, near space, far space. Let's talk about space first. That is the most important thing. The discussion has come there again, back again. What do you have to
Yeah.
say to that, sir?
No, as far as this news is concerned, that Russians could be thinking of putting nukes in space, it is kind of not very confirmed. I mean, news has come out, but even Americans are telling, their government that please declassify the information, because they just said this is what is likely to happen. But what exactly are these weapons going to be? There are varied versions from that. Are they nuclear powered satellite or nuclear armed satellites or satellite itself which will act as a nuclear weapon? And to what purpose? To target other satellites, to act as anti-satellite weapon, etc., etc. But one thing is very clear that Outer Space Treaty very clearly forbids weapons of mass destruction to be in the space. So if the world prevails, and there are everybody is signatory to that, but I mean we all understand what kind of what kind of teeth do the UN resolutions have that kept aside. But the fact is that people will talk about it, and in case something gets revealed subsequently that it is cause of concern, then obviously there is going to be a lot of hue and cry than one odd article. You see, I go by it that how many people are talking about it. It's an opinion piece, or it is just an off article, or just some kind of leak of information, or the world at large is immediately concerned about it, that what is happening. So if that happens, then probably we will hear a lot about it. But yes, you can't ignore it, you can't brush it under the carpet, and I'm sure powers that be are closely watching this. But till then, when the purpose is clear that as to what is it going to be for, then I think we'll just have to wait and watch. That is as far as this
Sir, but
particular piece of news is concerned. Yeah.
weaponization of space is something which has been spoken about for a long time. And,
Mhm.
people and ASAT systems are there. Whole lot of stuff is there in the market right now where the war can be taken up into the space, the domain of space. uh, is this a complete expansion? Because we see the way Starlink has been used in Ukraine,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
in a very very effective manner, as a matter of fact. So people will obviously be looking at a counter to this. uh,
Of
how
course.
how how do you think? I mean, I want to kind of discuss space first before coming to
Mhm.
uh, near space and what we
Near
are trying to
space.
do.
Yeah. See, weaponization of space, is like you said, very often talked about a phenomenon. That what is weaponization of space? Now, in very colloquial terms, since time immemorial, if I'm using GPS-aided bombing for that matter, okay, would you call it weaponization of space? Because you're using a space asset to guide your
Hmm.
weapons in. Okay, if my GPS satellites are in space, and my weapon is using GPS, guidance to go to the target, then de facto you are using medium of space. But classically, what was termed as weaponization of space, that are you putting weapons in space? whether you are using like that way, even communication, satcom, like for my war fighting, if I'm using communication which is coming through satellite and it is helping me pass orders, to my front, then would I call that I have weaponized space? Because I'm using a space asset to fight my war. But that has been happening. What we are talking of is, are there going to be weapons in space? Mean, will satellites carry weapons which can be launched from space, either in space to another satellite or into the ground? Even ASAT weapon, incidentally, has been launched from ground only. So the ground launched weapon, which you are sending in space. So tomorrow, if a satellite launches a weapon to target another satellite, that will be real weaponization of space, in my opinion. And it may not be far, because you see, what is weaponize, how do you weaponize things, or why do you weaponize things? Even space treaty says that all celestial bodies, like even moon, etc., will not be used for placing weapons, or for it will be, exploration will be for peaceful purposes. But this outer space treaty never talked about, like for example, asteroid mining, say, or minerals come out in moon, or some very very precious metals, or things like come on moon. Now, are we going to, let's say I find very precious metal in space, am I going to use it in space, or will I get it back on Earth? I mean, where am I going to use that metal? Essentially, you will cart it from space, let's say, for quite some time. I mean, till you develop colonies in space, you will be using it on Earth. Now, if there is a cargo, satellite or something which is carrying that $1 billion worth, or even trillion, or whatever unit you put it to it, is carrying that mineral to ground, then it will need to be guarded. And if it needs to be guarded, who can guard it? Army can only guard it. Even your assets, why do countries have armies? Because they have assets. And who can guard the assets? Army, in a larger sense, in the sense of security forces, right? So if it comes to that kind of stuff, then obviously you will slowly see proliferation of weapons into space, and that is when exactly weaponization of space probably is on the anvil from that point of view. So that will be the complete picture as far as space is concerned. A lot is happening. Anti-satellite weapons, of course, people are testing now. They are talking of, under the robotic arms, are coming up, for debris removal. A lot of anti-satellite weapon creates a lot of debris. Even when satellites, break up, people, there is a, responsible behavior in space is being asked for, that, when you launch a satellite, launch at an altitude that it gradually declines and gets to Earth, okay, or it's so high that you should be responsible to push it up to a graveyard orbit, what they call beyond geostationary orbit. But a lot of nations don't do that. So if it keeps orbiting, they said, okay, let's clean up. Clean up means you have a robotic arm which goes and literally picks up the debris. Now, if a robotic arm can pick up debris, it can pick up anything in space. Why only debris? So tomorrow you're going to have nano satellites, you have micro satellites, you have CubeSats, you have this. So they are not looking any different from debris. So if you develop this capability and it is not monitored, and it is not, it's not with a responsible agency, then all these things are going to create problems and are challenges for the future. So this is how space is developing. It's actually becoming the next frontier of war, and people are very mindful and agile about it.
So the whole concept of near space, we know space, we know the space station, we know satellites and this and that. This discussion came into fore when uh, the Chinese actually started sending up these balloons,
Yeah.
and people started talking about high level but not that high level attitude, low level but not that low level, is beyond 80,000 feet to about 150,000 feet, or beyond, sort of a thing. And there's this bracket where people suddenly started discussing कि यार ये
Yeah.
एक जगह है, there is something up here. uh, please help us understand what this is so that we can actually talk about it a little deeper.
No, this is very important, Adi. I mean, good we are talking about it. You see, it is akin to, if I can draw an analogy. We talked when we were talking of engines. You remember we said that why, we can launch GSLV, we can launch rockets. We are, cryogenic rocket, this rocket, GSLV, PSLV, etc. You can send satellites to space. You can send, Chandrayaan, etc. But you can't make jet engine. What is so great about it? So similar analogy is here, that you can send a mission to space. You can, put a satellite in geostationary, means 40,000 kilometers orbit. You have number of satellites. I'm not only talking India, I'm talking of the world.
Yeah.
Okay, that you can put, thousands of satellites at 500, 600 kilometers. Elon Musk launches, every third day you hear 40, 50 satellites. Okay, so why what is it near space that everybody is finding so difficult, to be there? Okay, so this is the space from about 20 to 100 kilometer, which is essentially unexplored. Okay, unexplored for a number of reasons. You can call it, it's ignored or neglected. Not so much because people are not mindful of it. Weapons have been transiting this space incidentally, or your ballistic missiles, all your, other vehicles transit through this space, but there is nobody venturing in that space. Okay, so what exactly the reason that this space remained neglected? Not that people did not think about it, but it was more, in my opinion, because of lack of capability. So what exactly is the capability that is required to be at 60 kilometer, which is not required to be at 500 kilometers or at 40,000 kilometers? Okay, what's so great about it? So it's important, I think, that we understand this quickly. I mean, I will make my intervention quick as possible, so that we can interact with your audience. So can I just request for the presentation? I'll just run through it and make my point. Okay, now this is a famous picture. You see, taken from YouTube, that and YouTube plane and the Chinese balloon. Okay, this is what YouTube can go to 21 kilometers. They say 70,000 feet, and this is Chinese balloon, and the whole near space thing people started talking of when this came into picture. Now this is history. I am not going to repeat what exactly happened here. So the next one, please. Now we are talking of, you see, if you have blown up the earth, and I have marked two altitudes, up to 20 kilometers, and the next one is 100 kilometers. Okay, let's start from top. What is the significance of 100 kilometer? 100 kilometers is a roughly denoted altitude, which is called common line. And we say that this space below this is any country's sovereign space. Okay, so if I say that Indian Air Force is responsible for the air defense of nation, it is responsible for the air defense of nation up to an altitude of 100 kilometers from the surface of earth. Do we
Wow.
have that capability or not? We will see that. Okay, every country is like that, so nobody can venture. Suppose an intrusion comes below this 100 kilometers, then it is intrusion. That is the reason why was Chinese balloon called an intrusion, and not a Chinese satellite which goes maybe 50 times a day over US space. A satellite which is going around at 400 kilometers, 500 kilometers is not an intrusion. But something which came up at 30 kilometers or 25 kilometers was termed as intrusion, because it is below 100 kilometers. Okay. Now, this 20-kilometer altitude is roughly where I've shown. I mean, I've just taken a ballpark figure. Okay, where your influence of normal aircraft is there. Your normal aircraft means heavier than aircraft venture in this space, or their influence. Not necessarily that an aircraft is flying at 20 kilometers, but take its weapon system launched, a missile launched, can reach probably up to this altitude. Okay. Now, the next one, please. So what happens is, this is my area of interest, which I'm saying. So my aircraft can remain below 20 kilometers, and my satellites and all that free space are all above 100 kilometers. So, okay, this
Mm.
is the space between 20 kilometers and 100 kilometers, okay, which is of interest, and which I would say was kind of ignored or neglected, because there is no capability to be here. It may be of interest to know that why there is no capability to be just in this particular space. You can be above this, you can be below this, but you can't be here. Okay, so it is interesting to know that why can't you be here. Okay, so I will briefly say why. Now, how are the aircraft able to be below 20 kilometers? Let's see the next slide, please. How does an
Propulsion.
aircraft produce? Okay, no, this is not propulsion. This is
Wing.
now
Yes.
wing. Okay, this is a aerofoil. Okay, it's a side view of a wing. This is how a wing looks like. Okay, and this is how aircraft produces lift. What is shown in arrows is a relative airflow, right? Because air passes on top of the wing and air passes on bottom of the wing, creates high pressure below, low pressure above. So with a resultant, it produces lift. and it aircraft stays afloat. It has to have certain amount of airflow reaching or crossing or passing over its wings before its weight can be sustained. That is why we all know, why does an aircraft travel or runs over an runway, before it gets airborne. It builds up speed
Build
up
up
to
that.
200, 300 kilometers, so that there is enough air pressure available on the aerofoil to create that differential lift, so that it can sustain itself in the air. So it would be important to know what is most required medium here is the air, that is atmosphere. So this atmosphere is available only up to about 20 kilometers or 15 kilometers or 13, 12 kilometers, I would say. That is where most of the airliners, fly, or some, spy planes, etc., go above that, because there is enough atmosphere available to generate this lift. Higher you go, the faster you have to be. If at sea level, I can produce that lift at about, let's say, 200 kilometers, then at 40,000 feet, just to give you an idea, I will have to travel at 400 kilometers to produce the same amount of lift, because the air is getting rarer and rarer. Right?
Hmm.
Okay, it does not have that buoyancy, or it does not have that value, the absolute value to generate that lift. So the higher you keep going, you need to be faster and faster. And incidentally, SF-71, which flew again 71,000 feet, had to fly at Mach 3 plus to generate that kind of lift, in a fighter kind of configuration. Okay. So this is as far as aircraft is concerned. Okay. Now, so aircraft, we say, cannot go above 20 kilometers because there is not enough atmosphere to venture above 20 kilometers. Okay. But what happens to satellites? Next one, please. Now, I will just spend a little time over here. Now, these are various orbits shown. How does satellite stay in the air? Satellite stays in the air because it's continuously falling towards the Earth. It is not being propelled. The fuel that it carries essentially is only for orbital corrections. It's not that fuel is
Yes.
making it go round. Okay, it's a free fall phenomenon. What happens is the gravity of the Earth always pulls the satellite towards itself. Okay, so when it's falling towards the Earth, it continues to gain velocity till it reaches very high velocity. Then its orbit is so designed that it skips the Earth's
Because
circumference.
of the speed. Huh.
Because of the speed and because of its position. I mean,
Hmm.
gravity is not enough for it to pull completely towards it. Now, when it skips the Earth's circumference, or Earth's edge, it goes to the other side and keeps on accelerating because it was falling. It had built up speed till its acceleration is arrested by the Earth's gravity, and it starts falling again onto the other side. So that is how the orbit continues, right? So what happens is, now every satellite needs a particular speed to stay in orbit based on what altitude it is at. Okay, why is that? Because what is Earth's gravity is pulling it, and now if it has to stay in an orbit, let's say circular orbit, what does it have to balance? It has to balance Earth's gravity, correct? If I could produce a centrifugal force which could balance Earth's gravity, then it will stay there, correct? Right?
Correct.
And that force, how is that force produced? Because it's rotating. Mv square r is the phenomenon. Mass is common, v square by r. So now, say geostationary satellite, which is at 40,000 kilometers approximately. Okay. Why is geostationary satellite required? Because it wants to continue to illuminate at the same part of the Earth. It is
Same point.
rotating at
Same. Yeah.
the same point. So its orbit is so designed that it continues to rotate at the same speed at which the Earth is rotating. So if it is rotating along with that, it will continue to illuminate the same place on the Earth. Take a case, you are standing in the center and you are rotating around your axis. Your face is rotating around your axis, and there is someone at 400 meters racetrack there, and he has to continue looking at you. He will have to run at a particular speed that as you are rotating, he continues to keep facing towards you,
Yeah.
right? So at geostationary orbit, which is at 40,000 kilometers, a satellite has to be at a speed of 3 kilometers per second to match the Earth's rotation, uh, 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 around its axis, to be at the same place. As you keep getting the radius low and low, when the it comes to low Earth orbit, for example, 500 to 600 kilometers, the same satellite has to travel at 7.5 kilometers per second almost to produce the same kind of force. Okay, let me give you an example. You have seen hammer throw, the
Hmm.
athlete doing hammer throw. Okay, so it's, let's say, 8 pound, ball. Okay, and he's got a string, that chain associated with it. So he rotates it at a particular speed. Let's call it x speed, and he leaves it because of that force. This hammer, travels, let's say, 50 meters or 60 meters. Correct. Now, what do? I reduce the length of the chain. Okay, I make it one fourth. Instead of, let's say, 2 meters, I make it 2 feet. You're with me? And now you have this hammer, and you want to rotate this hammer and want it to go to same 60 meters. Can you imagine at how fast you'll have to rotate it? You can't rotate it at the same speed as you were rotating it when it was, its length was at that much longer. Okay, so it'll have to rotate, its rotation will have to be very fast, right, for it to go that far. Because now when mv square r, when I say, so if you keep reducing r, you will have to increase v. Correct. I mean, it's v square by r. Okay, so it's a straight formula. I mean, if I reduce the r to one fourth, the speed will have to become double because it's v square. Correct. So double the speed will match up one fourth of r. Okay, so what happens is, now you imagine that if you keep reducing this altitude to now less than 100 kilometers, let's say you want to launch a satellite at 80 kilometers, the speed required will be so phenomenal that it is impossible to generate that kind of speed purely because of Earth's pull. So it will eventually need it propulsion, continuous propulsion. Okay, even when we are talking of very low Earth orbits, VLEO, they are going to be 150 to 200 kilometers. Okay, so now what happens is, now when you need propulsion, it will almost become like an aircraft, which is continuously being propelled. It will need to carry a lot of fuel. It will become heavier. Payloads will suffer. Its life will suffer. Why life will suffer? Because now, while for the aircraft, I can understand that it is not so much of atmosphere. For satellite, it is too much of atmosphere, because satellite is used to operating almost in vacuum. 500 kilometers, 600 kilometers is vacuum. But at 150, at 80 kilometers or so, you have too much of atmosphere, whatever it is there for satellite to rotate at that kind of speed. And now it will start getting into Mach number effects, heating, all those phenomena will come in place. Okay, so that is why you can't have satellite below 100 kilometers of altitude practically, which can go around like that. And point number two, what we discussed, that if below 100 kilometers it's going to be sovereign space of a country, then obviously you can't take your satellite around and around Earth, no, because it will transgress all other countries. Whether it can be targeted or not is a different issue. But the problem is that you are having a problem. Correct, that you cannot transgress people's altitude. So what do you do in this near space? So a lot of work is going on. We will discuss what can be done. Next slide, please. One alternative is that you put balloon there. Okay, now hot air balloons, etc., we've all seen, but only thing, they have not been going, there for tourism or something like that. So they are taken to altitude. They have actually reached altitude from where the Earth's curvature is also visible. So now a lot of work is happening on these. Yeah, there are companies which are doing this balloon kind of stuff. Okay, uh, in India also working on it. Abroad there are a lot of stuff happening. So these are the balloons which can be taken up now to higher altitudes, maybe 30, 40 kilometers. And as then other problems come. How much helium will you use, how will you control that, etc. We will come to challenges. Okay, and another thing which is being worked on is high planes. Next one, please. This you must have seen, this NAL news. Okay, it was in news that they have experimented it up to 3 kilometers or something. So they're planning to take it up to 30 kilometers. Now you see, why do you see this so large? It's about 31 meters wingspan. Okay, because it cannot go at Mach 3. We are not planning to run it like SR-71. So if it does not have that kind of speed, it must have too much of area. You are producing lift because of two factors. The formula of lift is half CL rho V square S. I mean, you leave everything else which is constant, V square S. So you have to compensate this force by two ways. Either by V, which is very high speed. If you can't generate that high speed, then you have very large area. Okay, so this is what is being done. Now, what are the challenges? Let me start challenge from this. Challenge in this kind of plane is going to be, because how are you going to power it? Essentially, we are going to use solar power. Okay. Now, all satellites carry those solar plates, and they can generate enough power, solar power, because they have no obstruction to the sun. But these planes essentially will remain in the atmosphere. They will encounter some clouding, and more important, they will encounter night. You see, means they have to build up enough solar energy during daylight hours that in the night they can sustain that same kind of power. So solar panels which are required on a wing, in a balloon you can carry flat, but if they have to be on an aerofoil, then you need to design a solar panel which is contoured, okay, which is work in progress. So means moment you have a contoured solar panel, that which can fit in on a wing kind of thing and produce lift and those kind of stuff, that is when this technology will mature. Okay. And what is going to be the challenge with balloons? Now balloons, people would say that how will you control drift, because there is going to be wind currents, so it is just a balloon. So it is not carrying any engine or something. Even if you put little propulsion systems along with it, which can control its minor drifts, etc. But there are various ways to do that. How scientists do it? They map the atmosphere. You see the wind current. Wind current varies with different altitude, and there is a pattern in the wind that it goes around in circles. That if for a set of for a band of altitude, you always have either easterly, westerlies, or things like that. If the wind moves in a particular direction at lower altitude, it will move in the opposite direction at the other altitude. So what they will do is they will vary the altitude of the balloon accordingly, with little bit of releasing gas, closing port, etc. That if it is drifting into one way, you change the altitude of the balloon so that it gets into a wind direction which is in the opposite direction. So by varying altitude of the balloon, you can control drift of the balloon. What will these vehicles do being at 70 to 80 kilometers or 60 kilometers? What happens is a lot. Mota, what they're going to do is, let's talk of imaging. Okay. Now, if satellites today, they can, very good satellites, 30 centimeters, 40 centimeters resolution they claim, because they're high, they're filming from 500 kilometers. But if I could film this from 80 kilometers, a very vast area, or 60 kilometers, your resolution can really be very, very great. Even 40 kilometers. Okay. You can get down to 5, 10 centimeters resolution. Another important is the communication. Okay. Now there is a latency. We often hear TV, or earlier when you had satcom, when you speak there is a delay. You understand? There is a delay. On TV you often hear that something is being said, there is a pause, other guy starts speaking, then that thing has not finished, right? And then again, that communication is coming with a latency, because it is probably traveling very high up and from there coming back. And interestingly, you heard that old army terminology, over and out. What was that for? That when people were speaking, you invariably you would end up talking in between. So it would jumble up communication, and since it was a war fighting involved, so there was a procedure involved. Then latency used to be very high. That I will finish my talk, and when I say over, is the indication to you that I have finished talking my part. So now you say you start talking your part. So till I hear the word over, I was not to butt in. Okay, this was to overcome this. And when you finished communication completely, the commander or somebody said over and out, means now finish, no more waiting. Okay, so this, because then the latency used to be very high. Now latency is not so high, but imagine if you have the same thing in balloon, you will have no latency whatsoever. It will be real. I mean, 40, 50 kilometers if it's beaming, that kind of communication. And in remote areas, now where we are finding there is no communication in hills and, shadowed areas, and you can, classically position balloons in coastal areas, you can have a set of things. And Another important aspect is IR, infrared. Today our LEO orbit satellites, the infrared that they use is not for imaging. They're for weather, etc. Because the resolutions are not very great. You cannot really have that kind of contrast available as is available from an aircraft. Like your aircraft system or UAV system can do a very good IR imaging, but satellites cannot do that kind of IR imaging. But these balloons, will be able to do that kind of imaging. So with all these things, when they mature up, it's going to be a complete game changer. So a lot of work is going on, so much so that Adi, China has created a near space command. In November 23, it was reported by, South China Morning Post newspaper reported in November 23 that China has created a fifth force after Army, Navy, Air Force, and Rocket Force. It is the fifth command, which is Near Space Command, and they're planning to use spy planes, balloons, and hypersonic weapons. Will be controlled by this particular command, and there is it is still a work in progress. But the fact is that they're already reaching that level. So it must be an important segment of war fighting, the next frontier of war fighting, I would say. And we are working on it, but essentially we are a little behind, but because we are just started talking about it. Some work is going on, but more brains are working on it. Okay. So I'll stop here and let's interact with your audience on any questions on this near space issues.
Just, just one question on this, sir.
Of
Uh,
course. Yeah.
when you are, the balloons, of course, have a certain. I mean, let's talk about the Chinese balloon that was sent across. That had a little bit of a propulsion system, and that also had weight carrying capabilities,
Yeah.
right? But this kind of an aircraft that you've shown us, this is, I mean, it's very light, flimsy sort of a thing.
No,
Uh,
it looks like that. I'm sure you see, it's a 31-meter wingspan is a lot of place, lot of area. You can put a lot of sensors probably at different places, and it's a surveillance plane. I mean,
huh.
it should be able to do its job. I'm sure they would have taken care of all that. What kind of sensors will it carry? The takeaway is uh, persistent surveillance. These guys, these balloons or these things are going to be up in the air for months together. That is what the plan is. That you have launched them
Yeah.
and they'll continue beaming. Okay,
So this balloon
in
that
in
was
your
sent,
peacetime activity. Yeah. Hmm.
the
Yeah.
balloon that was
Yeah.
sent,
Go ahead.
that had huge weight carrying capability. It could carry two town
Yeah.
buses.
Yeah.
Uh,
So see, balloon, it depends, because now it is carrying a gas which is lighter than air. It is working on that principle, right? So any amount of force you can generate with that volume, and if a balloon is huge, you see, what is it working on? It's working on a kind of, if I say, it's creating a differential between air, the air which is there and continues to go up, and it has to have a much lighter air, because ultimately it will reach a place where there is no more buoyancy available within the air available, and then it will need some kind of propulsion to stay or
Move.
remain afloat. Okay. And what happens is now you can have any amount of payload catered for that, and also these balloons have, I mean, there are a lot of details. They're compartmentalized. It's not that one puncture happens and the whole balloon is gone. They are self-sealing kind of things. Okay, there are a lot of things which take place. And very important aspect is commercial application of these things, which must come up. I mean, it's always my recommendation in any seminar that whatever new technology that we develop, unless it has a commercial application, it will
It
not
won't be
become
taken
very
forward.
viable. Yeah, just imagine aircraft. I keep saying, after Wright brothers, if the aircraft were only fighter aircrafts or only military aircraft, I don't know how much aviation would have progressed. It essentially civil application has a great role to play. So tourism can, come up. They will have to see that how to fund that industry. So tomorrow, if I start making balloon in an industry, so I should not be only dependent how many air balloons will Army, Air Force, or Navy buy. I mean, I should be able to sell some balloons of my factory for civil application. And in one of the seminar I suggested, I said, people go for destination wedding. I'm waiting for someone to do a ring ceremony or something like at 60 kilometers up in the air, looking at Earth's curvature. being closer to
Ex-
God for your, solemnizing your marriage. So it is possible, you see. Okay, this kind of applications, right?
So that's a wild thought, if I may. I mean, I've
No,
heard
no,
of
no. You will
you'll
see
find
one
somebody doing it.
day
No,
doing
there's
it.
a guy who's done an engagement ceremony while they jumped off an aircraft. Both are parajumpers, and he
Yeah,
put the ring onto her finger when they were falling from the sky, and then they both opened the parachute and came down.
yeah,
That has happened,
yeah,
but fantastic,
yeah. So
guys.
I
Let's
just, yeah. Mm, yeah.
please.
No, no, that's it. That's it. Thank you for your
Uh,
patient hearing. And
अरे नहीं sir, this was honestly the way you explain stuff like in very simple language बड़ा आराम से समझ में आ जाता है हाँ यार ये है
if
ठीक
someone wants a
है
little more explanation, I can go into that. There is no end to, this explaining laws of physics, and I'm very fond of it. But what happens is I didn't want to spend too much time on this. But I can always
नहीं
go deeper
absolutely
if
sir, we've
someone.
got a lot of questions, so let's get into that. And
Okay.
we'll put a little mirchi masala beach mein and see what we can actually learn more. So guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, yeah, spread the word. I say this every time. Please share these videos with people who you think will benefit from this sort of a knowledge. Uh, that goes for this one, geopolitics, anyone, because this is stuff we will not learn. And trust you me, when you sit down and read from a book, नहीं जाएगा. तभी हम लोग सारे रॉकेट साइंटिस्ट नहीं है या जेट इंजन साइंटिस्ट नहीं है. It needs to be explained in simple language so that we understand why things are happening. Now things are a little more clear why the Chinese chose a balloon to send it over, because there's the biggest perception was Chinese की इतनी हालत खराब है कि गुब्बारा भेज रहे हैं. That was one of the questions that were asked. कि यार, you're sending a balloon,
Mm,
you've got satellites, you've got everything. Why are you sending a balloon? And I've actually seen, some of the audience would know Colonel Douglas McGregor from the US Army, supposed to be a very, very erudite speaker in terms of military issues. Him saying, why are the Chinese sending this? Because they have satellites, they have no use for this.
mm,
And now we come to know the use is totally different.
yeah.
It's a very, very uh, different thing. Uh, so let's get into the questions, guys. Like, subscribe, and of course, you can contribute towards the effort by using the QR code or PayPal in the description. Ya fir super stickers and super chats. Let's see. All right, first one, JB. Thank you so much, sir. Uh, Bedi sir, do a show on modern Air Force in Gaza war. Question: is depopulation of enemy territory by Air Force a new war method that the Gaza war is given? Not really.
I mean, it's a different subject now. You see, what happens is these things are always debated. Go to Second World War. It is debatable whether that mass bombing of London, or not London, sorry. I mean that
Dresden.
yeah, Blitzkrieg kind of stuff was, did it work, or even in London. Why now in retrospect people say that Hitler made a grave mistake by switching his focus from radars or coastal radars to London city, or
Yep.
the city population. He
Stupidest
thought that
mistake he
he will,
made.
pressurize, yeah, that he will pressurize the,
Population.
by bombing the population, and, they will go against. In fact, it created a situation of they versus us, and the whole nation kind of woke up, and he lost his military objective. Blinding those radars would have paid much greater dividend than London bombings. Okay, so this will be now here when we talk of Gaza and Israel. I think the equation is we are not talking of two equal nations, and the wars may not be fought like this. Okay, this is a very different kind of war. Okay, but if we are talking of standard warfare, whether it will work in that or not is a very, anybody who switches his efforts to this kind of thing, I think is going to leave a lot of military targets intact, which may hurt later. You can do this kind of thing if you have, other stuff under control. Otherwise, my recommendation would be not to lose focus or sight, which can make you win war. Okay, you
Yeah.
don't have to get emotional in war. You have to be practical and pragmatic about what your target system is, what can make you win war.
Even the firebombing of Tokyo, where
Yeah.
50, 60,000 people died in the first night itself. Yeah, that was disastrous. 60,000 people, but that didn't break the Japanese will to fight.
Japanese will fight.
It didn't. I mean, even the first bombing of Nagasaki, Hiroshima, didn't break the will.
Hmm.
The second bombing almost didn't break the will by the time the emperor came and said, "Okay, done, enough, stop."
Because they
Otherwise,
didn't know what happened. I mean, how to counter it. There was no counter
but the
available
loss
at
of
that moment, and you,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
the loss of civilian life didn't really break the will.
Mm.
So I think your point is very, very, very valid. That if you are wanting to kind of you know go that way, then you're going to leave a lot of the military targets intact. And for example, the Japanese had 5,000 aircraft for a potential US invasion. So,
Yeah. And
point
in
taken,
this
yes.
case, yeah, in this case, another thing is that their targets are not much delineated from civil population,
Ji,
and especially
ji.
in Gaza.
Hmm,
Okay, I mean,
hmm.
we every Sunday you hear hospital bombing. Every Thursday, then someone says you have command and control center there. Okay, someone says no, we don't have. So delineation of military targets and civilian targets is not very well marked. Okay, but where it would be, I don't think it will pay much greater. Like dropping bombs on a mall or something like that. Then you later on justify that, I'm talking of Ukraine,
Yeah.
okay, no, no, it was this, it was that, etc. I mean, it doesn't
It's difficult to
really help
justify. Yeah,
create
yeah.
that, that kind of effect.
Even the Ukrainians, when they go and hit this stupid building with 5 drones in
Yeah,
the middle of business district in Moscow. I mean, you
yeah,
wasted pretty good armament. You infiltrated your special forces within Russia. You did all that stuff. You went 600 kilometers inside Russia, fired 5 drones that went and hit a bloody glass building in the middle of
yeah,
business district in Moscow. It didn't make a damn of a difference. And this also 2:30 at night where everybody was sleeping.
absolutely.
Absolutely correct, sir. I think that's a very good explanation. Thank you so much. Preetham ji, thank you so much. India has a capability of reaching 80,000 feet to had the capability of reaching 80,000 feet to 120,000 feet with Foxbat ramjets. Lacking this capability a concern, or those times are over? Your thoughts, sir?
No, no, this is India. Means it was kind of, we had that MiG-25, reaching that. I mean, India had capability because these aircraft like SR-71 and MiG-25, these were the times when satellites were not in vogue. Okay, now we find, and SR-71, for example, there were 32 made total. Okay, and 12 of them were lost to accidents because it took an army to maintain that aircraft. It was very, very expensive. And there were very large mishaps. Okay. Similarly, MiG 25 is also very, very difficult to maintain, but there was no choice. There was no choice because there were no satellites at that time. Okay. So now, when satellites came, this to maintain this kind of aircraft means to go to 80,000 feet or 120,000 feet in a MiG 25 kind of aircraft or SR 71 is not considered viable. Okay, now you have to find a via media a much cheaper option to be there. This is what we are talking. Okay,
Unmanned.
otherwise these aircraft unmanned, of course. I mean, it'll have to be unmanned because now manned aircraft missions at that, it will create a lot of. I mean, you can't have a human airborne for now unless now you're not going to create a space station there. Okay, I mean that's a different kind of ball game to stay up in the air. But for a surveillance mission all by yourself, in single aircraft or even if there are two of you, you can't stay airborne for more than 8 9 hours in a cockpit. Then you need a complete paraphernalia to sustain. So that is the issue.
Absolutely. Uh, just a second, sir. JBJP bhai, aapka yours is a beautiful message. I will, if you don't mind, take your super chat at the end because it's a beautiful message. We will take that later. Atul Singh ji says, thank you so much. Hi, sir. Any idea of Indian defense sharing technology and guidance for Indian startups for domestic usage? Example for agricultural industry. Jai Hind.
I think lot is happening now. When you say Indian defense sharing technology, I don't know what Indian defense can share. Actually, Indian defense has no technology whatsoever. I mean, we are talking of DRDO or something. I mean, Air
Mm.
Force has no technology per se, or Army has no technology. It is the industry which has technology. Okay, or our labs have technology. I mean, Indian Air Force does not produce anything, or by itself. It only kind of, it has BRDs and things like that which make things, but it is done in laboratories in DRDO or something. Those technologies are being shared. For example, we are talking of space. NSIL now, the commercial arm of ISRO. Okay, now they demonstrated SSLV, small satellite launch vehicle. Okay, which was purely
Yeah.
for commercial, for startup. They have no use of SSLV because they have much higher rockets available. Okay, so they developed that technology primarily for commercial use. Okay, and similarly, if it comes to drones, etc., they all startups, more than 200 to 50 startups are there in drone industry and things like that. People are doing a whole lot of work, and they are picking up technology every second, third guy is being guided. So there is no what I would say, yeah, there is no hesitation in sharing technology unless it is of classified nature, or something which has to be kept very close to heart. There's quite a bit of interaction between civil and defense labs now.
Just taking this question to pass a message, sir. Asked, sir, recently Vayu Shakti 2024 R-73 and SMAR missiles misses their target. Now that's wrong. Please read the official readout. This is a narrative which is being put across. This is absolutely wrong. Do we need to have more frequently the trials? Vayu Shakti, and if I may, sir, take this opportunity. It's a display. Trials are done all through the year. And over to you, sir, if you'd
Yeah.
like to.
I why I consider that I am apt a guy to answer this question. I was ACS offensive option air headquarters. Assistant Chief of Air Staff, offensive operations, looking after all the air launched weapons of the entire Indian Air Force. Okay, and we had a schedule. Okay, every squadron, every pilot, periodically, etc. It is not question of only testing weapons. It is also pilot training. That how I saw the aircraft system testing. Okay, so all these things are scheduled, and all the aircraft, all these missiles, they have a cycle. All missiles have lives. All missiles have shelf life. Then they are very expensive. They are again brought online. Tests are done, etc. So there is a schedule which is worked out, where every weapon system periodically, depending on how expensive it is, okay, it is fired based on how many you have, what is the replacement plan, what are the squadron roles, etc., etc. So these trials continue, like you said, throughout. I have myself fired an R60 MK missile, while I was commanding 26 squadron way back in 2002 to 2004. Okay, and a flare was launched, and it was quite a high, sitting in aircraft firing actual missile, and watching then another, because technically when I launch the missile, I'm supposed to break off, because you don't continue in the same direction. It's a close combat missile, so there is another other aircraft filming it. Okay, so this is a film taken by another aircraft, where you see the missile leaving the aircraft and tuck hitting that flare. Beautiful video. So it is done all the time.
So I'm sure firing a missile was not a thrill, but dropping whatever ammunition you did in Kargil was more of a thrill than
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
else.
of course. No, that is true. That was with a purpose. The purpose is different. Moment
Yeah,
the
yeah,
purpose is different, the of course the thrill changes, because there was a lot at stake. This was a trial.
yeah.
Nothing. I would say this was a trial, and what would have been the end of it, even if it hit or not hit, a report would have been generated. That did
Gee,
it hit the target? If hit the target, well and good. If did not hit the target, do a bit of analysis, that what went wrong, what happened, etc. But in Kargil, it was entirely different issue. You didn't have a chance ke bhai, anything, whether it hit or not hit. Everything had to go there. So that
yeah.
was a different ballgame
For
altogether.
those of you who don't know, sir has 35 operational missions. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. On
Yeah,
in during the Kargil war. Someday I will make sir talk about it.
yeah, of course it will.
Cyber.
Incidentally, 25th. This time it's going to be silver jubilee of Kargil,
Yes, sir.
2024. Okay,
Yes, sir.
and I'm
So yeah,
looking
so
forward
let's keep it
to
for that, sir. Let's keep it for
go
that, and we'll
there.
hear your story of the war.
Yeah. So I'm planning to
Yes.
go there. Air Chief Marshal Dhanova very fondly. We have flown a sortie together in Kargil. I mean, he'd come
Acha,
from 17th Squadron. Yeah, he'd come from 17th Squadron, and he was then commanding 17th Squadron, and I was Flight Commander 51 Squadron in Srinagar.
sir.
So when this happened, we lost immediately two aircraft and then helicopter, and then we shifted to night operations. So night operations in hills is a very different ballgame. So it was, when the squadrons were told to fly at night, then Air Chief Marshal, then Wing Commander Dhanova's squadron was new in that area. And I was very fortunate that he asked that, can we fly one sortie together at night, so that I just want to orientate myself what hills are like, because you don't fly on compasses in hills. Your orientation has to be very different. Okay, so I flew a sortie in the trainer with then Wing Commander Dhanova, and we did one night mission together in the trainer. Very fond memories, and he very fondly recalled later in one of his interviews with the NDTV, Vishnu Som, and when he was chief. And he recalled that night, and he said, when we shifted to night, then I flew a squadron sortie with then squadron leader Bedi, now Air Vice Marshal. So this interview he was giving in 2017. I have a bit of recording of that. I'll show you sometime. Thank you.
Fantastic, sir. Cyberpunk says, Sergi, is this going to open a new can of worms considering CCP historically has never cared about their own populace? Your thoughts? This is when we were discussing the weapons in space, sir.
Mhm. So it will, what happens is everything is will open a new can of worms, because any space, you see, what happens is people's aim is only dominance, whatever it takes to do that. You've gone underwater, you've gone into space, you're doing a whole lot of things. You've built ballistic missiles. See the kind of arsenal. And why space is becoming important? Because most of your future weapons are going to be controlled through the medium of space. You will have satellites controlling them, you'll have satellites guiding them, you will have satellites detecting them. Okay, I mean, if I have to build up a capability to track hypersonic missiles, how am I going to do that? Not sitting in my drawing room. That, my ground radar will see it very, very late. So you will have to have a space capability to detect this missile. Earlier, you could detect a plume of a missile, ballistic missile, because ballistic missile trajectory could be generally calculated pre-hand. It did not deviate. Hypersonic missiles, when come on the scene, they are maneuvering. Hypersonic glide vehicles are maneuvering. So you can launch in one direction, it may be heading for another direction. So your space applications are just mind-boggling. And of course, communications. When we come to, I mean, the way space is taking over is not even funny. So it is definitely going to go. And then the next thing is coming. I mean, we are not yet talking of quantum. You see, there is going to be quantum application in space. When those things come, it will just change the entire scenario.
All right. Batraji asks, sir, is it possible for one satellite to kinetically attack an enemy satellite?
It is possible, but what happens is it is just a question of making it position in someone's. Uh, this is what weaponization of space will actually be when people start hitting targets from space to space. I mean, just getting into something. Invariably, what happens is you put somebody in someone's path. Okay, attacking means it will not go like the Star Wars that you launch and do it's chasing somebody and hits. You can't chase a satellite and hit it incidentally. I mean, you'll have to be double the speed for to make impact. You'll have to come in its way, to collision. So it may be termed as an attack, or it may be termed as a disruption, or it may be termed as, something like that. But anything which is moving in space can be disrupted. I mean, you call it attack, you call it disruption. It is kinetic attack is very much possible.
Sir.
But more than kinetic attack, what is more beneficial is using other forms of attack, like your HPMs or laser beams, dazzling a satellite. You carry very expensive equipment. Russia is doing it all the time. China does it all the time. Okay, so what happens is when a satellite comes and with its camera open, you dazzle it. You can dazzle it to an extent that it can spoil that sensor. So now what happens is that now the satellite knows either not to open up over this territory, or how to guard it, or develop some countermeasures, or change or something like that. So more than kinetic attack, I think you are disabling that satellite's operation. That is what people are working on. It is more, I would say, economical to do that, because you just have to generate a laser beam. But for kinetic attack, I mean, just imagine uh, you are destroying his satellite with your own one satellite. Now, when two satellites collide, it is anybody's guess who destroyed whose satellite. Yes, of course, he will have payload. You may launch it without payload. I'm not at all comparing two equal. I mean, when I launch a satellite to put it in someone's path, I definitely don't have to put any sensor in it. But rest of the technology essentially is going to same, no, for it to get into orbit, and then precisely to be at a place where other satellite is going to, be at that moment. So it's a difficult. And your ITU, International Telecommunication Union, then it allots orbits. Then people are watching that what are you doing. It's not there will be hue and cry. Space situational awareness is not what we have talked about, because it's a different subject. A lot of people are investing in space situational awareness, so they will watch that somebody is trying this kind of stunt, so they will take evasive maneuvers, something like that. So it's very cumbersome thing, uh, possible by laws of physics, but I think very very cumbersome to achieve.
An off the subject question, JBJP, he says, thanks so much. Firstly, he says, Bedi sir, they are toy drones, YouTuber drones. Questions, what is the weapons payload capability in kg? A drone can be called a military drone.
There is nothing, there are classifications of drones. Okay, I think even other day, yesterday, there was a news that one a guy carrying food delivery, in Gurgaon here, was headed for a place and crashed into South City too. It was carrying 5 kg of weight, some
Yeah, yeah.
pizza or something. Okay, so what happens is, the up to 250 grams of, there is no permission required. Up to more than that, there is a full drone policy which has come out. Military grade is entirely different. Military grade, what kind of weapon it can carry. They are, it's not only question of weight. It is also like tomorrow, agriculture drone, for example, carries 25 kgs of that spray tank, you see. I mean, or some kind, there are heavy drones which are there. Okay, now they are also changing, I mean, making them light. But now, what the purpose is, it's just not weight. It is a type of payload also, which matters. That what is it carrying? So I don't think there is any weight specified beyond which it can be called military or civil. It's essentially the type of payload also which governs that.
Unknown gunman says, what is the point of having a nuclear weapon in space when ICBM can do the same thing?
Yeah, precisely. You see, what happens is ICBM will do what? Intercontinental ballistic missile is for ground targets. What this nuclear weapon in space will essentially be, suppose it is there, okay, that it can now, this kinetic kill which we talked about, putting a satellite in other's path. Suppose if I have a nuclear weapon, then I won't have to do that. I just need to do a blast, and anything comes in that area, it will destroy those satellites, a number of satellites. And you take out some people's satellites, 6 7 of crucial satellites, you can make a significant dent on its capability immediately, where you can achieve a strategic objective. ICBM will not be able to destroy a satellite. I mean, it's just transiting through the medium of space, but it is not for that purpose for which they are planning to put nuclear weapons in space.
Plus, time on target from space to Earth is much lower from a space fired weapon rather than a ground fired weapon. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir.
Yeah, that is for a different reason, but I don't think they will put that is where the difference in understanding is. Putting nuclear weapon in space is not to target ground station. I mean, not that you can't do it, you can do it, okay, but what happens is, I mean, that is for, like, for fractional orbit entry, for example. I keep going round and round, you don't know where am I headed for, and at a opportune moment you enter, and you can launch that. Yes, for that purpose, yes. But ICBM, like I said, moment it is launched, it can be intercepted. But a satellite, no one is intercepting. You don't know what is it carrying. Okay, so let's say even if a ground target was my final destination, yeah, across the globe, okay, Then I launch an intercontinental ballistic missile. Its trajectory is known through and through, and once it is launched, you know it will go and hit. It can't come back to its silo. No, okay. But a satellite, if it's carrying a nuclear weapon, let's say I'm going to use it as a nuclear weapon, then it can keep going round and round for a year, maybe. Yeah. Okay, you don't
Yeah.
know when, and it enter anywhere from that orbit. You can inject it, and it can
Mm.
target anything. That's what FOBS is all about. Okay, fractional
Yeah.
orbital with it,
ना तो
system.
सर मतलब एयरफोर्स को आके देख के तो प्रोक्योरमेंट के बारे में तो सवाल आते ही आते हैं बट इन एनी केस
Yeah, yeah.
आदिनाथ साहब थैंक यू सो मच ही सेज A400M best choice for transport aircraft of India.
Is it a question or a statement? I mean, any transport 400M is a good aircraft. I've seen it flying in
Yeah.
the UK. Okay, it when it's empty or something, they've almost shown demonstrations like a fighter kind of maneuvering. I mean, not exactly, but very steep takeoffs and very steep wingovers, etc. But you know what happens is we have to see what do you require an aircraft for? What is your objective? What is your what is the kind of fleet you have? What kind of infra you have, and what is your requirement? I think the selection essentially gets based on that kind of requirement.
True, true. So powering the aircraft that we saw, the question says, what about micro reactors producing electricity? Recently, there was a news about Chinese developing some kind of a similar thing which can be used on giant panels.
Which can be used instead of panels? Yes, probably. But I think again the cost, maybe, I mean, I am not straight away able to say that which could be better, which could be not. But because micro reactors producing electricity and solar panels, I mean, are we are discussing with solar panels, and the cost effective and the ease of doing operations and etc. and free energy source available, from that kind of space. Probably these are the calculations which will govern the use. But you can never do one at the yeah, it's never an either or situation. Either it could be a combination, it could be whatever is more beneficial, whatever works better, etc. Probably those are the things which will govern our choice. And it can
Sure.
be done. If it can be done, anything which produces energy will be used, right?
Sure.
Yeah, pseudo satellite. What is it?
Honest Best Video says, will pseudo satellites be the answer to problem in venturing 70 kilometers above Earth's
Yeah.
surface?
See, what happens is, what is pseudo satellite? I mean, the name suggests it's a pseudo. It's a something which behaves like a satellite, but it's not actually a satellite. Okay. Now, HAPS, what we call, they some people call HAPS as high altitude platform system or high altitude pseudo satellites. Okay. So you don't call it a hail aircraft. Let's say Indian government was making hail, and now I want to do something different. Then I say, they will say, no, we already making hail. Okay, so I say, okay, if I don't make hail, I will make pseudo satellite, or I will make something like that. Okay, so that is that. It is meant for that only. I mean, it can very much do the job, because it is essentially another form of something which is lurking at 70, 60 kilometers. It's doing the job of a satellite without being satellite. Okay, very
Sure.
much there. Yeah.
Jays says, when US tested an EMP as part of a Operation Fishbowl, Starfish Prime, it knocked out power in Hawaii. It also fried a Telstar satellite, the first transcontinental comm satellite. The question that I would actually add to this would be that um, your would EMP weapons actually produce the similar amount of effect kept in outer space?
It depends what kind of power you're using. Like I said, that dazzling or affecting a particular system, etc. If you can produce that kind of power, we discussed a bit of it in directed energy weapons. When we talked that how can they be effective against missiles and hypersonics and things like that. But similar application can definitely be there in space. EMP is very much possible, or is an answer for. Tackling space things, provided you can produce that kind of power, I would say.
The wings of the aircraft, sir. Bedi, sir, 31 meters is too long. It means equivalent to an 8 to 10-story building.
31 meters or 31 feet. I think I thought it was 31 meters. We can Google it if I'm not mistaken. Now that he's saying,
I
or 31
second.
31 meter. Can we Google it quickly? Let me. Now that
Yes, sir. What's
we
the
are,
aircraft called? The
it's a NAL just launched,
NAL Albatross.
no, no, just, we can come. Someone, I think, one of your audience can Google it because
Yera, yera, मिल
it's
गया.
a stratospheric
See, high altitude wingspan of 12 meters. Yes, sir. So 30 feet. Yeah.
31 30 feet over. Then my apologies. I think I made it wrong.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
No
Thank you
problem.
for correction. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. You know what
Huh?
happens when one is talking?
No, no, perfectly fine,
Uh,
sir. Perfectly all right.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah, yeah,
says current altitude and endurance is operate at altitude between 18 to 22 kilometers for months or even
yeah.
years.
Yeah. That's what
Yikes.
it will do.
Sir, now we'll come to a little bit of a lighter part where obviously every time you come, loads of people give compliments. I have picked out the best
Oh
one.
no, no,
This is also awesome, such complexity explained with such simple terms. Thank you, Air Marshal, sir.
no, no.
That
Thank
is
you very much.
one. Abhinav says, sir has explained very well the answers to all the queries in mind, but there's still one. There is that China doesn't follow. That is one. Shrikant, thanks so much. I will check my mail. Thank you so much. Uh, JBJP has a message for you, sir. Thank you so much. Firstly, he says, Bedi sir, on behalf of Punjabi military officers, please give a message for peace in Punjab to Punjab youth, Punjabis on the streets for Kisan Andolan 2.0. There's always a message of peace.
Oh yes, we all do it all the time. I tell you. I mean, it's very unfortunate that these things happen. But what do you do? Such things.
Life is like that, sir.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And this is
Absolutely.
a bit of a personal question. You're free to not answer it if you like.
No,
Kalashan,
no,
he asks this quite often. Thank you so much. Uh, Baby sir, what is your favorite lemon juice brand? Adi, I want to make this question a ritual now. By the way, lots of love to both of you. Thanks, man. I know you mean your question with all the best interest, but I thought we'll
yeah.
just close the show on a smile.
Thank you.
uh, all right, guys, let me just say thank you so much for actually engaging in some very interesting questions, I must say. uh, this is a not an intricate, it's not a very light subject, it's an intricate subject that to understand. And we all right, there is another one who's popped in. Thought provocator, thank you so much. Satellite ke liye space weapon or ground target ke liye ICBM? In short, मच्छर के लिए किला हीट और कॉकरोच के लिए लाल हिट, अच्छा, काला हिट और कॉकरोच के लिए लाल हिट.
Lol
Yep,
it. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very to the point, simple way of explaining stuff. So they're picking up your
yeah.
knack. बड़े सिंपल एक्सप्लेनेशन देते हैं लोग. आपसे
Yeah,
सीख लिया है हमने.
while why I would just like to just leave that little bit thing, because I think what we are talking of, this 12 meters, because ultimately when it goes up, I think it will have to. This is the experimental thing now, because you see, 7 meters used to be wingspan of MiG-21. Then we came to Mirage, which is 9 meters. Okay, Su-30 is almost 10 meters. So this
10 meters.
altitude, which is this is going to be up there, okay, is will not be just 12 meters. I think it will have a larger span. But now, since it's a new thing, we are in a little bit of you know uh, this thing, because now if you just see a simple hail, which is Reaper. Take a case of Reaper. Okay, if you see the wingspan of Reaper, I mean, it will give you an idea that what kind of wingspan are we talking of? Okay, Reaper wingspan is 20 meters.
Tip to tip.
Okay, so tip to tip. Okay,
Whoa.
so because this is required, that kind of, they are of almost half the football width. So I was just wondering if this 12 meters, what it is said is that it is probably the one model which they've tested now. that which has gone up to 3 kilometers, and now it's flown about 8.5 hours, I think. Okay, because it was recently came. I mean, I just read it as a news, and we built it. Because even if you see that photograph, that
It's huge, yeah.
thing, if you re-put the photograph, you compare its length to wingspan. Just put it for our knowledge. Can you see it there? I mean, because we are talking professional. You see now, if this whole thing has to be just 12 meters or 30 feet, with respect to that, its length needs to be just 4 or 5 feet, yeah,
No,
or
this will be
maybe 10
12
feet.
meters each side then, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I think 31, that figure I let. Anyway, I leave
Yeah.
it to, but it is definitely not that, or it is a smaller version of
Okay.
that.
This is
Ultimately,
interesting.
it will plan to be much. Yeah,
Burjinder
U2 spy
says,
plane has 31 meg. Yeah, yeah. So it will be in that category, what I'm saying. So, for this thing to sustain at 60, 70,000 feet, okay, it'll have to have a huge wingspan. It can't be like
sir, it
Su-30,
is
it
12
will orbit
meters each side. 12 meters each side.
meters each side. Yeah, yeah,
So,
probably.
yeah, almost
And if
a
it's
time.
12 meter each side is wing, then there will be bit of fuselage in between, etc. I mean, these figures, because these are new things, may vary from place to. Now, I didn't want your audience to go totally perplexed that
No,
it's
sir,
choda
but
sa aircraft.
the
Yeah,
you kind
it
of
was playing on my mind. Yeah,
the second you put that across about
Reaper.
the
Yeah,
Reaper, now that kind of clarified a lot. That's a huge
yeah,
aircraft. If it's,
yeah.
I mean, I just an off this thing, sir. You've seen that jet pod thing, no? Which the Americans have. That front say
Mm-hmm.
ऐसे, there's a
Yeah,
big jet
yeah,
engine.
yeah,
That thing is massive. I
yeah,
mean, I've seen a guy standing in front. It's massive. It's huge.
yeah.
I mean, whoever thought drones have to be small?
Like that. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Sir, thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking to you. And guys,
Thank
I'm
you,
going to
Adi.
leave
Thank you
this with
so
you.
much.
We will discuss some amount of what weapons were fired in the Vayu Shakti, probably in the next program, along with some amount of air defense, because we need to. I'm trying to coax her to help us understand how this whole, for the lack of a better term, since somebody put machar in my head, I'm going to just say it, machar of air defense works. So, because it's important for us to understand there are loads of misconceptions on this, loads and loads of misconceptions, and so if whatever is there in the public domain, if sir can help us understand in this particular thing, I think a lot of things will get clear. As usual, sir, it's a pleasure talking to you. See you next time.
Thank you
Jai
so
Hind.
much, Adi. Thank you. Thank you. Jai Hind.